You are listening to The Scope, Phelps Health Podcast, episode 25. Today we're talking about coping during the holidays. Let's get started. Hi everybody, I'm your host, Paige Heitman. The Scope Podcast is produced on a regular basis and can be found by visiting phelpshealth.org. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your SoundCloud stream or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow Phelps Health on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. All links can be found in the show notes. Now let's get into our show. Today we have one of my favorite guests back, Phil Cox, who's the Interim Director for the Auxiliary and Pastoral Care at Phelps Health. Welcome back, Phil.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you back. I noticed today you're wearing one of your wife's homemade masks.
I am?
Yes.
I am. Hopefully it doesn't clash with anything else around here.
No, I think it looks great. That's really awesome. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about coping during the holidays, which is going to be really different this year because of COVID-19. Right. So what are some of those key stressors that people just normally deal with anyways during the holidays? Let's just start there.
Well, it's just, and depending on obviously the individual situation, sometimes it's just the stress of feeling that you have to be at every party. Mm-hmm. I know sometimes in years past, the volunteer, primarily ladies, have asked me to talk to them about holiday stress. And I said, first of all, decide what you want to participate in and let everything else be okay that you're not there. And just politely say, I can't be there this time. Thank you for the invitation. And just go to those things that you want to. And the rest of the world will go on by. Everybody will be fine. And just don't let it overwhelm you. And so just as a normal thing, just have to do that. Because you can't be at every party that you're invited to. You can't go everywhere because it will get overwhelming. And that's normally.
Yes. So this year we have a different thing that we have to deal with, which is COVID-19.
Yes.
So whenever our families ask us, or assume or expect that we're going to be at these events,
right,
some people may not feel comfortable, or
That's
they may be immunocompromised, or
That's
whatever the case may be, so they may not have an option.
That's
so
true.
How do you politely say no and not feel any sort of remorse or guilt behind that?
Well, most people will understand, hopefully, that if you really feel for your health reasons mm-hmm. that you don't need to be there, then they will understand that and accept that. And again, you have to just leave it there and say, I really don't feel I want to jeopardize, myself by coming. Thank you for inviting me. I would love to be there otherwise, but I just don't feel like I need to. And people are doing that in their church gatherings now. And they're being told, if you don't feel comfortable, that's okay. That's fine. Hopefully families will understand that and say, we'd love to have you. If you don't feel comfortable being here, that's okay. But we love you anyway.
I think it's a great time to be an introvert. I'm naturally a little bit introverted whenever I'm not doing things like this. Yes. And so I think this is a perfect season for me.
It is.
Because I get out of a lot of those things
That's
where normally I would make myself go to or feel like I'm obligated to go to. But Instead now it's, well, because of COVID.
That's right. I really don't need to.
Yes, and it's almost an easy out now. So
it is.
What about letting our family know that we still love and care for them? How do we just let them know that we're still here even though we're not physically there?
Well, we can send them things. We can talk to them on the phone. We can FaceTime them. We can, with Zoom technology, we can gather a bunch of them mm-hmm. on the screen at the same time. Now, unless you pay for a higher grade of Zoom that can only last a certain amount of time, or you could do that. And you could have a whole family meeting and a gathering for a while if you want to do that. Now, it's not the same as being in the room, mm-hmm. but just let them know in several different ways. You can make somebody's favorite dish at home. Oh, look what I've got. Favorite decorations. Send them their favorite ugly sweater or something to let them know that you're thinking about them. Whatever way the individual and their families communicate, and that's going to be as individual as the family and the person is.
That just made me think about how Christmas cards might wind up coming back in style.
Very much so.
When all this is said and done.
Yes,
the idea of a handwritten
Christmas
note.
Card. That's right.
Yes, I think that really could make a difference with a lot of people. I know I still do handwritten notes. I really appreciate those, and the value and the impact that those can make
yes.
really makes a difference,
yes,
especially during a time when you can't get out and see people.
That's right.
Right? What about
That's right.
hugging? Boy,
Hugging,
that one's a hard
it
hard
is.
one.
And again, that's going to be an individual decision, individuals and families. For example, at my church, there are people who just say, I don't care, you're going to get a hug. So I just kind of,
You run the other way.
I try not to, so I'm wearing a mask. And there's one lady who's 80, and she said, I don't have it. And of course, I don't get into the dialogue of saying, how do you know? I let her hug me, and I hug her. I'm wearing a mask. She's not. But most others keep our distances and say hi or bump elbows or something. But there are always going to be those people. And again, that's the individual family that have to decide what they want to do with that. Some families are going to, and some won't. And there are going to be individuals in the family who are going to keep their distance, and there will be others who will hug.
Yeah, it's just completely dependent, right? Whatever they're comfortable with.
It will be. And there'll be some in that family who may be compromised in some way, and they'll just stand back. And there may be others who say, don't hug grandma or don't hug Uncle so-and-so because they could get sick. And let's honor that.
I always think too, we always tend to focus on the negative impacts of COVID-19, especially during the holiday season, but there still can be some positive outcomes with this too. Families could become a lot closer this holiday season.
Yes, they can.
Instead of running around to 15 different Christmases or 20 different Thanksgivings and multiple states, it could be a little bit more intimate.
And much more focused, just on who and what's important, instead of 20 different locations and people and gatherings, just maybe on family, the people who are most important, maybe close friends. So it gives us an opportunity and an excuse if we need it to do that, just to focus on a few things.
What kind of value do you think that provides to people, especially in a time where we can't go out and live our normal lives?
Well, I think some people who might miss out on some of that attention, especially widows, widowers, other people who might not get some of that attention, will maybe get some now. This time around that they might not get otherwise. So there are some value in that, I think.
Do you think holidays will ever be the same after this? Do you think families will go back to those big gatherings at some point?
If they see enough value in this, they might. Although sometimes our attention spans are not very long, and the distractions and the pull to do all the other things that we normally did could get the best of us. Some may stick with some of these different traditions.
Yeah, it's hard to change our decades long of traditions, right? Or generational traditions.
That's right.
So I thought of a question whenever I was preparing for this podcast, and we talked about this previously in another podcast. It was this idea of listening, and I think especially during this round of holidays, whenever we're all going to be maybe stuck with each other a little bit longer than we would normally, or we'll be stuck with the same groups of people. How can we listen better to each other this holiday season?
The key to listening is staying in the moment.
Define staying in the moment. What does that look like?
It is focusing on the person, what they're saying. In other words, if I'm here with you, I can let my mind drift while you're talking. And if you then ask me a question, which is probably has happened in the past with my wife, and then she'll ask me a question and I'll realize I'm in trouble because I didn't hear this question. And then she pretty much knows that that's the case, that I didn't stay focused on her. And that's a whole different set of questions and dialogue that goes on when I'm busted that way. But it's the practice of staying in the present moment and not allowing your mind to wander. And that takes a lot more effort than we sometimes think. Because again, depending on what else is going on around us, it's easy to drift, especially if the person is talking about something that we may not really be interested in. But if we're interested enough in the person, then we stick with it. And for those of us who sort of listen for a living, then we have to discipline ourselves to do that. And that is in so many different fields, so many different disciplines and fields that you have to be able to do that.
So is listening a dialogue, or is listening, like you said, a practice? Is a little bit of both?
It is a little bit of both because, for example, to let somebody know that you're listening, they need to get a little bit of feedback. And as I talked about earlier, maybe paraphrase what they said. And as I learned not long ago in sort of a technique, and not just a technique, just as a rote technique, but repeat the last couple, 3 words they say. Now, if you do that long enough, they're going to think you're just parroting what they say, but just to let them know that you're hearing them or paraphrasing them or putting maybe an emotional terminology to what they're maybe trying to do themselves. And that gets into helping them with grief as well, putting an emotional voice to what they're struggling with. So those kind of things let the talker know that you're with them and that you're staying in the moment with them.
Yeah, you're engaged in some way. You haven't lost them.
Exactly.
So what are some ways that maybe we can work not just to maintain our mental health, but just really maintain some healthy habits during the holidays? Because this, starting right now, holiday season, October, is really when they start tapering off and going downhill.
Yes. Well, I think we need to be prepared. In other words, now we know they're coming.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be caught by surprise. And so plan now for what we're going to do for example, Thanksgiving and Christmas, the things that we want to do. Start talking to family about their plans, who plans to get together, who doesn't plan to, and depending on the ages of the kids and whether they're in school or college or not, those things take some time to get together. And so start sort of sketching that out, at least to find out where you're going to be, where you want to be, where you don't need to be or want to be. And so just don't get caught off guard would be one of the things that I would say.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point. I think it sometimes can be harmful to not communicate, right?
Absolutely. Communication is very important.
Especially during the holidays too, because what if one family member shows up and they have a whole carload of kids and nobody else was expecting them?
That's right.
Boy, that could be an issue this holiday season.
And if you have to make a list on who all to talk to, then do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So what are some other ways that we can, maintain healthy habits? What are some other things that we can do?
Well, like you just said, talk with others is, and even if you're grieving, don't be afraid to talk with others, and be honest, and say, I'm just not up to doing certain things, and I'd like to do this. I think I would enjoy that, but other things, I just don't feel up to. And I think that's important throughout. Is just don't be afraid to say how you feel. Be honest about our emotions, be honest about how we feel about things, and also let others help you. If you have traditionally been the one to do all the cooking or all the entertaining or all of these things, you may not feel that way this time. And so feel free to let somebody else take over some of those things, some of those responsibilities, and that can be very helpful, and let that be okay that somebody else is taking that over. And I know for some who are real doers,
that's hard.
It's very hard to let somebody else do it because they may not do it like you did. And so you have to be willing to let them do it like they do. But I think that's important because you can exhaust yourself trying to do it again when you're not up to it.
Yeah, you brought up something that made me think it's so important to be in the moment. Yes. And to let others give to us, because we really can't fill anybody else's cup if our cup is empty, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, how difficult that can become.
Yes.
And you brought up another good point too about setting priorities to minimize holiday stress.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that you mentioned in here is it's really important to lay out your priorities now, because if you don't, then you're going to wind up running yourself ragged, and everybody's going to see that, and you may wind up showing people the worst version of yourself, and you don't want them to see that, right?
True.
Yeah,
True.
Great point there. So something else that we always like to talk about is this idea of practicing mindfulness or other types of tools like that. What are some of those helpful tools that we can implement during the holiday season?
Well, again, being self-aware enough to know what I'm feeling and especially why. You know, if we push things aside and try to ignore why we're feeling these things, and not only what we're feeling, but why, then there's no way we're going to be able to not only focus on it and face it, but we're not going to be able to deal with it at all. And we'll just continue, especially with grief, we're going to continue to try to go around or over or under the thing that's bothering us. And that is whatever loss it is, a loved one or whatever. So we need to be honest about that, and then understand I'm sad, and this may be hard. And there are parts of it that are going to be great. There are going to be fond memories, but some of those memories are also going to be sad memories. And that's okay. That's normal and natural. And so I think that's what you mean by mindfulness, is just being open and honest about that.
And letting those emotions flow.
Exactly, letting them flow.
How can somebody handle if, they're feeling down and out and somebody says, well, don't feel bad?
Well, I don't know how you just turn that off when someone says that to you. As a response to that can simply be, well, I do. I appreciate that, but I do feel bad, because I've had this loss. And so, again, that's usually said with the best of intentions. But I think we just have to gently say, well, today's not a good day. I do feel bad. This is just one of those days where I feel bad. I'm very sad about this loss. And again, that's okay to feel that way because that's normal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to show up as our authentic selves.
Yes.
Although
absolutely.
sometimes that may be difficult because everybody expects us to show up and put a smile on our face. Maybe not everybody expects that, but sometimes we expect that of ourselves.
We do.
Yeah, to put on I call it a PR page and a normal page.
That's true. That's
so
right.
depending on whatever situations I'm put in, if I'm in an uncomfortable situation, I put on that film of PR page.
Right.
And if you know me really well, you can tell that there's a difference in who that person is.
And we kind of refer to that as an Academy Award recovery, which says, I'm fine.
Uh-huh.
And we're not fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just say, I'm fine, because we feel that's what others want to hear. And then they can be comfortable. Because if we're sad, they don't know what to say.
Yeah, because that's uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
Right? Nobody wants to feel those icky, sad, uncomfortable feelings.
That's right, especially during a holiday gathering.
Yeah, absolutely. So is it bad to take times for ourselves during the holiday in order to recharge our batteries if we're feeling down and out?
Of course not. And sometimes it's necessary. That may be the very time when we need to. Even if we feel like everybody else seems to be doing the other thing, that may be time when we need to take that time to recharge and think about what's next and what we're going to do maybe in the new year. So that's fine.
So on the flip side of that, what are some ways that we can focus not on the negative but on the positive? So if we're in that mindset, how can we try to, move through that, but then once we move through that, try to get ourselves refocused?
Well, one of the best, of course, I would advocate taking the action steps necessary to move through that and beyond the grief, as described in the Grief Recovery Handbook.
Mm-hmm.
But that is what you need to do, is to say, what can I do moving forward that helps me to keep the fond memories and lose those things that turn those fond memories into pain, and to recognize that there are some steps that I need to take to do that. And even planning to do that and to know it's going to get better can help you. Just to recognize that I don't have to be stuck here from now on. Because if you don't have any kind of plan like that, then you don't know how long you're going to feel like you do, which may not be good.
Yeah, it could be a black hole, and then you just dig yourself in so deep you don't really know how to get out, right?
That's right.
And then you wind up pulling everybody else in with you.
True.
Especially
and
if you have family
either
members or kids.
They don't want to be around, or you tend to isolate yourself, which is not good.
Yeah, and then it just continues to spiral.
That's right.
No, I think that's really great. So speaking of family members, let's talk about kids for a second, because
Okay.
a lot of people have kids. So how can we help not only ourselves but our children manage stress during the holidays, because any idea of normal has been completely thrown out the window?
Right. Well, I think first of all, just again, be honest.
Mm-hmm.
First, be honest about our own feelings about it. We can't go see grandma and and I'm sad about that. And so we have to do something different this year. We can call her, we can talk to her, we can FaceTime, or we can do any number of other things. And we can send grandma gifts. She's going to send us gifts, and just help them give voice to their feelings. But we have to take the lead on that. We can't tell them don't feel bad, don't feel sad, don't cry. Don't cry. This is Christmas, because again, they can't turn their emotions off, and they don't need to get a signal from us that it's bad to feel sad, because again, they already either feel sad or not, and so we don't need to try to control that, or we don't want them to go away feeling that I can't express my emotions in front of people. So we need to let them know that it's okay to feel sad, because I do too. And I'm sad we can't go visit. I'm sad grandma can't visit here, or whoever. And then maybe do something new and different this year. Look, we're going to show grandma her favorite decoration, her favorite tree decoration, or we're going to make her something new, and we're going to send it to her. So try to be creative so that they can do something different or new that helps to not just to get their mind off of it, but to make it as good as we can. And then hopefully maybe next Christmas we can do what we like doing again.
Yeah, I love that. It made me think back to a podcast that we did with Dr. Rackham. Mm-hmm. And you guys sounded very similar there for a moment, talking about children, because whenever you engage them in the decision making, they do so much better, and they have more resiliency later on in life.
Yes.
And so I think this type of advice just really sets them up, and they don't even realize it.
Right.
Because I'm sure this will not be the only pandemic or disaster that they go through in their lifetime.
That's right.
So if this is handled well, then it could really set them up for success later in life.
Sure.
No, I think that's awesome. What about practicing gratitude, not just with like our children or in our household, but how can just overall practicing gratitude contribute to happiness and reduce stress?
One of the things that I've done is very simple. Just at the end of the day, think of 10 things that you're grateful for, 7 or 10, and do that for 7 or 10 days in a row. And they can be small things, and it might be some of the same things from the day before, but that small habit can do amazing things just for your mindset, for your attitude, and sometimes take your mind off of whatever didn't go right, and sometimes there'll be big things that happened, and it just does something for you, and you want to do it more than just whatever time frame you set to do it. And so I think that alone can do amazing things for you, and that's very simple to do.
Is that because it changes the habit of thinking negatively? Does it?
It does. It does, because it's easy to drift into the negative thinking, and then just turn that around and say, today here's 10 things. And again, they don't have to be big things. They can be small things, but it just shifts our mindset, shifts our emphasis and our thinking to realize that I could probably list 50 or 100 if I really wanted to. And these are just the first 10 things that come to mind. And then you realize there are a lot of good things that I can be thankful for.
Yeah, boy, if you want to get real basic, you woke up today.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what immediately came to my mind.
I had food today.
Yes.
I had a bed to wake up in.
Yeah, just very basic needs that are met every day. Yeah, that's really cool. So one of the greatest holiday stresses, like you've mentioned, throughout this podcast, is the absence of a loved one who has passed away recently, or maybe not even recently. Maybe they were just somebody who really meant a lot in someone's life. What are ways that we can cope with this type of immense loss? Because normally around the holidays is when that can hurt the most.
Right. And what adds to that is advertisements and so forth that their family gatherings and the overall view is that there's our family and so forth.
Yeah.
Again, make favorite foods. That was the loved one's favorite food. Put up favorite decorations or ornaments. Do things that honor that loved And again, let those emotions go wherever they go. And I've already, even being in the hospital and even immediately after the death of a loved one, especially when it's toward holiday time, the families sometimes will start telling stories about this individual around holiday time. And sometimes it brings laughter. It brings good, fond memories. And then I realize, okay, for now we're in a good place here because they have good memories that they use. And then they'll say, well, we'll have to do this because he always did. And, it doesn't mean they're not going to be sad. It just means that they've already started thinking of things they're going to do in memory of or in honor of this loved one that they've just lost. And so those are some things that you can do that can help, I think.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. My Nini, my grandmother, she always made Christmas candy. So whenever she passed away almost 10 years ago, I took that over. And so every year I took on, I want to say burden now because it is so much candy. And I make the candy every year for my family.
Right,
so
right. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to wrap our show. Thanks so much for coming back, Phil.
Sure.
It was great speaking with you.
Good to be here.
If you liked our show and would like to know more, check out phelpshealth.org. Thanks so much.